Oh, I totally fucked up over here. I was trying to. Anyways, I'm focused on my stogie over here. Welcome to the Coin Drop Podcast, episode 48. As you can see, I'm paying attention to the wrong things over here. And Russ is not here. I believe he actually, he quit totally. He said, fuck this place, and he's gone forever. So sucks to be that guy. He's busy this weekend. If I'm not mistaken, he actually explained this last weekend. He's doing Dungeons and Dragons. This is his 8-year campaign, and he is finishing it. 8 years. If you've played D&D, then you know that's a long time to play the same campaign. It's rather intense. So he's preoccupied. He's off doing more important things. You got to pump them numbers up. So we are here trying to figure out how the hell to do this thing without him. And we're going to talk some stuff that might be relevant, might not be. So I guess we can start the way that Russ starts it every week. Mike, he is our editor, by the way. If you don't know him, he's been on the podcast a few times here and there. And exactly. So let's start the way Russ does. Mike, how has your week been? Okay. No. Were you at least playing a video game? We were playing, or no, we're a video game podcast, and you're over here watching Naruto? Naruto? Kamui, I think? Whatever. He's a wee, but doesn't know how to pronounce shit. And hanging out. My week's been busy, as I mentioned last week. I think last week was the first time I mentioned it, but in any case, I am working 6 10s, so I work lots of hours. And yes, 60 hours. This is correct. It's 60 hours, but I get paid for 70 because overtime. The overtime is time and a half. Oddly enough, so maybe my Twitch over here is effing up. It says it's live, but I can't get it to play. Just are you sure we're live? We're good? Oh, well, it's not working on my side, so fuck me, I guess. Anyways, yeah, no, so I actually got a little bit of time this week to play some Dragon's Dogma. I didn't play terribly too much, only a couple of, probably like 2 hours worth, something like that. But I'm, as I stated in the Discord, I believe I stated this in the general, so if you are in the Discord, you will notice that I'm talking about something that I mentioned in there. I'm enjoying the game, but I'm what is it? Rise of the Ronin released on the same day, and I'm almost disappointed that I didn't buy that game. And it's not any sort of detriment to Dragon's Dogma. It's just that Rise of the Ronin seems more like it's what I want to play right now, and I'm sad I didn't buy it. I mean, they're both open worlds, but Dragon's Dogma is far more of a hardcore old school RPG in the sense of like, if you want to fast travel, fuck you. I mean, good luck. There's 3, I think, fast travel crystals that you can get in the per playthrough. So if you play through the game more than once, you'll be able to get 3 more. So therefore, you have 6 and so on and so forth. And the first game was 1. It was 1 on the first game. So yeah, it's yes, yes, and you have to run everywhere. That's just how the game is designed, and they don't hold your hand. They barely tell you where to go. There's no like circles that when you accept a quest it says go here. You know what I mean? So you have to really, really pay attention to what you're doing. But it's just really well built. This game, it's more modern and it feels better than the old one, and it definitely has a better quest log, so it's easier to follow along. But it's nothing. Again, it's no detriment to Dragon's Dogma. It's just that I want to play a ninja game right now, or a samurai game, and so that's really all it is. But I'm gonna stick with Dragon's Dogma. So I could. Um, um, that would be really nice, actually. But I need to play games that I've not played before. I don't have time enough for the games that I do have that I haven't played. So, yeah. Sounds good to me. Yes. It depends on who you are, more or less. So, as you guys have seen, I have quite the wall of video games, physical video games to my left. I buy everything physical if I can manage it, meaning if it has a physical copy, I will buy that version first every time. That's just who I am. Anyways, this particular topic was more of a request than anything. Basically, we're looking at the state of physical/digital video games in the industry. There's been lots of games coming out lately, and in many cases, well, not many cases, in some cases, more actually special cases, AAA games are actually foregoing physical copies altogether. I mean, you've got the Alan Wake 2 launched physical only or digital only recently for Xbox or not Xbox, for all consoles, PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. And then now you have Hellblade 2 launching digital only. And this game, I've got some mixed feelings about it. I absolutely loved the first game, and I have mixed feelings mostly because of the developer more than anything. The hypocrisy of the developer and what they've chosen to do as a developer, which isn't related to the game. So I'm trying to look at it that way. But in any case, yeah, it really is. It really is a separate topic. But anyways, they're going digital only, and there's lots of other little ones, like say Sea of Stars was digital only, although they did work together with IM8-bit to have a physical version come out, and I actually refused to buy the game digitally just because I didn't want to buy it digitally. And mostly because every time I bought a game digital that was digital only, it was like within a couple of months they're like, yeah, physical version's coming out, and I was like, well, fuck me. It's like I should have waited. And I did on Sea of Stars, and thankfully IM8-bit is coming out, and so I bought that version. But anyways, so if you really look at the industry, back in the day when digital or physical only was really the thing, there was no digital. PC was the first to do so with Steam. So, Steam's been available for what, like close to 20 years now, something like that. And yeah, and that was really the first push toward digital only. And PC is pretty much nothing but digital now. Physical doesn't exist. I mean, most computers don't even come with disk drives anymore. What's the point? Yeah. Yeah. Same here. Nope. I So my past 3 or 4 computers have been laptops, just because of the ease of use, and I haven't been able to put together a computer, and it's just been cheaper in the long run for me to do so, in the sense of like I wanted a good one. But anyways, I remember when I bought, like, the previous one I'd bought had a disk drive, and then the new one I bought didn't, and I actually went to try and use it. Like, I didn't realize it didn't have a disk drive. I went to go put a disk in there. I'm like, what? Where did it go? I remember having that disconnect, and this was well after PC had been pretty much digital only as it was. It was still just a weird like disconnect for me. But like I remember watching them phase out in the stores too. Like, they originally didn't phase out. You could go buy, quote, a physical copy, but you were really just buying a digital code that would work on Steam or whatever platform, mostly Steam. And well, you had the box.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, within the past couple of years, I think it's like the last 3 or so, digital has actually overtaken physical sales. Digital sales are just more popular these days. So it does make sense in the sense of like it saves a lot of money in not R&D, but in the production phase of things. You don't have to worry about making the discs and all that other crap. But,
yeah.
I don't know. You just look at it, you're starting to see more and more of a push in that direction, especially when you consider the amount of money that the companies are going to save. But you also got to look at the things like, actually, if I want to say it was the EA store, maybe it was the Epic store, one of the digital stores on PC, just updated their terms of service, and which this is the case for pretty much every single one. They just finally like laid it out. But basically, you don't own your games anymore. When you buy, quote, a game, you're buying a license to it. And now you're buying a license for the next like 100 years or 1,000 years or something like that. So you're going to have access to it.
A Ubisoft game, then it's only a handful of years.
This is true. But that's because of live service. That's not because of a particular developer or publisher or whatever. Yeah. That's because the game's no longer online anymore. So it sucks to be you. We talked about that a few episodes ago. Anyways, you're buying a license, and the problem I have with that is not because when I'm dead I won't have access to them anymore. It's that in the case of Ubisoft, or in this case it's the Crew 2, or it's the Crew 1.
This is the first one.
Yeah, the first one. It's the fact that if the developer for any reason decides they want to pull the license from you, they can. Sucks to be you. And there have been actually a few incidences of that where the developer has sort of like threatened to do that, but there's always been enough backlash where they didn't. I want to say Sony threatened to do that recently with not video games, it's the anime Crunchyroll. They're getting rid of Crunchyroll and keeping Funimation, or vice versa, one of the two. And it was like with movies that had to do with it, and basically they were like, hey, sorry, you're gonna lose access to these even if you bought them. Sucks for you.
That was like there was another one that they did previously. Sorry to cut you off like that. There's another one that they did previously. Back in like 2017, I came across a TV show. It was a Sony exclusive TV show called Powers. I don't know if you've ever. Yep. Yes. Yeah. It was a very good show. It was a very different take on the whole like superhero villain type thing, but it was more of like a drama detective type show. It was so weird the way it was set up, but it fit. Had one season, which sucked that it didn't get renewed, but I because I had PlayStation Plus at the time, I saved it to my library, and then after my PlayStation Plus at the time lapsed, I ended up going back and purchasing the season because it was that good. Yeah. And then at some point they stopped using PSN as a way to like market their TV shows. Like if you had PSN, you wouldn't just get TV shows for free anymore. You actually had to get like a separate subscription. Yeah. And now they have Sony Core movies, or Sony Core some weird platform that's separate now.
QORE? Is it still QORE?
Maybe. All I know is that like all of the stuff I had previously is gone now because I have a license to it.
Yeah, I asked because back in the PlayStation 3 days when they first came out with PlayStation Core, it was like a digital magazine effectively. But when I say digital magazine, I mean like it was actually video, so like more like a vlog. And they would talk about video games and whatnot, or I guess a podcast. In any case, I subscribed to that and I really liked it. I really enjoyed it because they would actually talk about games, and they would also give you demos and things of that other sort. And so I'm wondering if they've sort of kept it alive, they just morphed into something else. But just to digress before you answer that question, although I'm changing the topic, 1% has been commenting over here, and I want to address him. I agree with you on the Chrono Trigger. I've got the same thing on my wall over here.
I fixed my audio.
Okay, good. Yeah. And then the other one, yes, Sony actually bought Crunchyroll like a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. And they are getting rid of one of them. I think it's Crunchyroll, even though Crunchyroll's the bigger one. But they're merging them is what they're doing. So you're not losing anything. They're just
it's part of their app that they're trying to push. It's Sony Core movies. I don't think it's movies, but it's something like that. It's an app you can get it on your PS5, your PS4, and I don't know if you can get it on mobile yet, but basically it's like, as a PSN subscriber, you get access to like movies from the olden days. Some of them are remastered, like they have the original Matrix remastered in 4K with HDR. That one you can just have as a PSN subscriber. They have other stuff. I don't know if they're doing anything with Spider-Man, because even though Sony owns the IP for Spider-Man still, I think they're still in contract with like Marvel and Disney with that, so they can't bring that to their app yet. Their whole ecosystem with it is just really fucking confusing, and I just wanted to rant about it for a minute. We'll just call it digressing and move on.
Yeah.
1% says, not gonna lie, I'd be happy if they merged PS Plus with the Crunchyroll sub. Honestly,
I was really hoping that one of like the higher subscription services would give you Crunchyroll or Funimation. I was really hoping that would be the case. I would have totally paid for it, but
yeah,
that unfortunately doesn't appear to be happening.
No. I don't know. We'll see what happens next year when they hopefully figure out what they're doing with Crunchyroll and their movie platform.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, I guess another company that likes to shoot itself in the foot a lot, Apple. Talk about a segue.
I was trying to figure out how to word that segue, but go ahead.
Yeah. They decided that they are opening up the App Store for emulation support now, so you can actually like download emulators. And this kind of hits home for me because I spent a lot of time as a kid in high school jailbreaking my iPhone and running emulators on it. I did the same thing recently with an old iPad that is sitting around here somewhere, because I wanted to play Mario Kart just so I can have bragging rights to say, I'm playing Mario Kart on the N64 on my iPad. It didn't work as well anymore because with all of the new updates to iOS and things like that, the ability to jailbreak it and then install Cydia and then rely on external programs, with the way that Apple is locking down the system, you now have to have like an external server basically on your computer that will forward a bunch of verification calls and things like that to the actual emulator that you have. Otherwise it just won't run
or anything, but
yeah. So them actually opening up the App Store to support emulators is a huge step for them, but I also feel like they're going to turn around. I'm going to give them 6 months, and I'm going to be generous and give them 6 months to a year, because if anybody can get Apple to say no more emulation, it's Nintendo.
Yeah, 100%. This whole time you've been talking, I've been like, where's the legality in this? I mean, they can allow the software, but the ROMs, that's where it becomes a problem. And so technically, if they provide only the software to emulate, but they make sure that no ROMs are available via that software, I don't think the companies can do a damn thing.
So it gets complicated, and I had to do like hours of research into this when Nintendo sent their DMCA to Yuzu, that Switch emulator. What ended up being the root cause for like the legality ground of it is that, yes, Yuzu didn't support or necessarily distribute any games, but what it did require was firmware and software for the Switch that the user had to get access to. So in Nintendo's eyes, taking anything that they own the rights to and removing it from the thing it's supposed to be on to put it on something it's not supposed to be on is considered copyright infringement. So that's where they went with it. And unfortunately, a judge agreed with them. So it's a catch-22 situation with everything.
Well, I mean, just like everything else, it'll just go open source, and you'll just have to bounce from one to the next. Worst case scenario.
Literally, not even a whole day later after Yuzu went down, there was like 6 new emulators that popped up.
Others, yeah, exactly. Nintendo is desperate to control everything that they make, which they have the right to. Good for them, but like they know it's a losing battle. That's all. All they're trying to do is squish as much of it as they can to make it harder on people.
Yeah,
which I get it. I get it. They have the right to do so.
The one time they Nintendo don't. Yeah.
I mean, it's 100% correct.
I think what's going to happen is Dolphin is probably going to try and release a build for the iPhone. And it's going to be like when they try to release a Steam page, and Nintendo's going to roll through and be like, no. We don't do that. They even do it on their own communities. Poor Melee scene. Yeah.
Nintendo, it seems to hate their fan base. That's not moms and children, because those people want to, do what they want with their technology and software. And Nintendo's like, fuck you. It has to be our way and our way only. Suck it. But again, it's a losing battle. There's nothing they can do about it, especially with the way the internet works these days. It's just impossible.
So with
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so with Apple taking that step into the emulation scene, we'll call it, I think there's a lot of potential there. I'm seeing old iPhones and stuff, and they're like the iPhone XR or 10R, whatever the hell it's called. It's a really capable device if you're just using it to play like light mobile games. So I don't see why you can't get one for like $100 on eBay and then just use it to play NES emulators. Like,
or, you know what you could do is just be a smart guy and get an Android. You've been able to get emulators on that for that past like 15 years, and don't be stupid about it. Yeah. let me add a caveat to that. I don't care. You choose whatever phone operating system you like. They're basically the same. I just prefer Android, and I've got no beef against Apple. I just like to give Apple users shit. So I'll leave it there.
I've had both, so I prefer Android, but yeah.
The way I look at it is, if I want to play a sexy version of Peach or Metroid, then I'm going to play a sexy version of Peach and Metroid. Speaking of sexy girls, why don't we talk a little bit about the Stellar Blade demo? We'll talk about a segue there. I was planning that one. So if you haven't been paying attention to PlayStation and their upcoming exclusive, I think it's like the 24th of this month, something like that. There's a new game from a Korean developer called Stellar Blade, and it's not Dark Souls. It's like Dark Souls Light mixed with slightly more fast-paced action, but it does have almost a Sekiro style where you have to block attacks, do perfect blocks to break down their stance or whatever, to break them so you can do massive damage. It has a lot of that in there, but it also does, if you want to button mash, you can. Of course, it's not going to be as well, but you're not going to die, in a matter of just a couple of hits like you would in a Dark Souls game or something along those lines. But, when I say sexy girls, I'm talking like she is the absolute embodiment of the perfect form of a female. And they went to town making sure it had the most accurate of everything in the game. I'm talking butt jiggle physics and all of the things. So fan service is through the roof in this game, if you care. I'm not kidding. Like there's video on YouTube and Twitter and all the other stuff. And I'm talking, yes, DOA would 100% be proud. Like their DOA is probably salivating at the mouth for this game. The way I look at it is yes, there's a serious amount of fan service. Actually, they just recently came out and stated that there's actually going to be plenty of fan service. So the game allows you to change costumes, and I don't know if the costumes have, or the outfits, I don't know if they have special abilities with them, but I do know at the very beginning of the game when you get pulled out of your pod. So the story of the game that I'm aware of, I haven't followed it super closely, but Earth has been taken over by these things called Naitibas. I don't know if they're aliens or what, because they sure look alien, but they're also like mutated and ugly and grotesque and all that other stuff, but somehow they've taken over Earth.
So they're aliens.
I guess it doesn't explain that in the demo. And in the beginning of the game, you're in some spaceships. There's multiple like large spaceships that are coming down to Earth, and they're talking about launch attack or whatever. And they drop pods, very Helldiver style. But before they even get to the point of dropping the pods, multiple of their ships of their fleet are just destroyed. Like, they get devastated right away. And
nice.
you're the main character, Eve, and you manage to survive. You barely manage to survive. You land your pod, and then when you get pulled out in effectively like they call it the naked suit. It's skin tone, it's skin tight, it's about as naked as you can get without being naked, and you can actually choose that outfit if you want to. But there's actually a detriment to choosing that outfit, because if you do, you actually lose your shield. So it's kind of like hard mode, which is kind of cool. It actually makes the game harder to play.
Okay.
But my point of that is, it's not Dark Souls where you die in a couple hits, unless you go to naked suit or whatever you call it, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know if the other outfits have different abilities or
I see what you mean. Yeah,
or whatever.
I haven't played the demo. Like I was telling Tim off screen. I don't have the motivation to go and try and decipher which games I want to remove from my PlayStation just to download the demo.
Go buy an expansion SSD. You're good.
I did, and you know what I did with it? I took it out of my PS5 and I put it right in my Razer laptop.
Go buy another one then.
So from the clips I have seen, I really like the way the sword, when you equip it, like pulls out from like your hair thing.
She's got a hair clip, and that's where she sheathes it, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think that was a really neat mechanic.
Yeah, it's a cool way for her to be able to hide it and not have to be like floating on her person like most other games, where they just kind of floats.
I wouldn't have hated that either, because like, and I still need to finish Genshin Impact, but like the way that they have the swords and stuff just floating with your character, like, it's a fantasy game, so in that sense it fits, you know. Yeah.
I would agree with you 1%, except for it's a lot slower than Bayonetta. It's kind of hard to place it. Like I said, it's like a Dark Souls light. And when I say Dark Souls light, I don't mean easy, like Dark Souls. Dark Souls-like games are all the same. They all feel the same. They have some slightly different mechanics, but they're all really slow. They're all based on learning attack patterns and things of that sort. And while this game does have attack patterns, it's not quite to the same level, and it's got you yourself have more health, the enemies have more health, and you can hack and slash your way through most of them, but it has that Sekiro feel, like I said, where you have to break the stance of the characters, where the enemies you're fighting unless they're weak ones. There's plenty of exploration, but it is what I played in the demo anyway. In any case, it's more linear, but they do have branching paths that you can go explore in and find things and stuff of that sort.
So it's like a God of War linear, where it's like this set path, but then you have these large open areas in between these paths type thing, or?
I didn't really experience any large open areas in the demo. The demo is about an hour long. It appears to be the very beginning, first hour of the game or so. They sort of explain how it's going to work. There's these areas where I guess there was squadrons or whatever before you that were sent, and they set up these like little camps, and you have to find these coins. I don't remember what they call them, but there's these coins, and you put them in a vending machine,
Bitcoin.
and that it unlocks the area so you can rest, even though it's just a chair that you sit your ass in, but you have to unlock it to use it. But every single one of those areas so far, that coin is right in front of the vending machine, so she picks it up and then she like flips it up, catches it, and throws it in the vending machine. It's like a little funny little animation. But there's a whole bunch of hidden stuff. There's a whole bunch of different abilities. There's a big old skill tree. There's like, it looks like it's going to have quite a bit of depth to it. If I'm not mistaken, they said the game's actually going to be kind of long, 25-30 hours, something like that. And more or less what I played, I enjoyed it. I'm probably not going to hop on it right away. At the same time, I'm working 6/10s like I started saying in this, so I'm going to have extra money to spend $70 on it if I want to. But time is the problem.
So, yeah, and then you already also spend the rest of your time in Dragon's Dogma. So
exactly. Yeah. And what I played, I enjoyed. I will 100% buy it eventually. It's just a matter of when, more or less.
I'll probably wait until it comes to PS Plus. Not saying that there's anything wrong with it, just like I just don't want to spend the money and time.
Well, yeah, I mean, so as an example, Immortals of Aveum, it came to PlayStation Plus this month, and I've been really wanting to play that game,
Mm-hmm.
and I intended to buy it, but now it's free, so I'm going to play it that way. And actually, one of the quick-fire news that we were planning on throwing at you this week, because this week was kind of bare on news. I mean, come on, look what we're talking about. Not the Stellar Blade, but the Apple stuff and whatnot. So
yeah,
there wasn't a whole lot for us to choose. So there's going to be a lot of quick-fire news the next 15 minutes, but. The cool thing about Immortals of Aveum, it's actually the first title that's going to use the FSR 3 in PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Every single game so far has used FSR 2. So it'll be interesting to see how it improves. I'm definitely be watching my Digital Foundry version of the FSR 3.
Of course you will.
Of course I have to. I have to plug them too.
Oh,
and I want my 10 cents. That they have yet to give me, those bastards. At this rate, they probably owe me a few $100, but we'll see.
To expand on the FSR thing, with the PS5 Pro supposed to be using its own upscaling technique.
Yes, that'll be interesting to see.
If that's gonna like work coinciding with FSR, or if it's gonna be like this or that.
That is a really good question. So if you don't know, which me and Russ talked about this when they discussed, or when the rumors of the PSVR PlayStation Pro leaked, more detailed leaks came out a couple weeks ago. PlayStation 5 is getting its own DLSS, effectively. DLSS, FSR, it sounds more DLSS, and without getting into the technical details, DLSS is significantly better enhancement than FSR is, and it sounds like Sony was like, well, let's go that route. One of them is AI, but also built onto the chip, while the other one's just software. And well, the AI built onto the hardware is better.
So that's probably going to answer the obvious 60 million questions that are going to come up when the PS5 Pro releases. That all the people with the OG PS5 are going to be like, why can't I have this super resolution thing working on my not PS5 Pro? It's because you don't have the AI chip. What's likely is going to happen is they might consider doing the software side of it, but I guarantee you the software side of it is going to be dog shit.
In comparison,
so. The other thing I want to point out on that is there's a lot of speculation. Even I think some of the articles I linked to you guys about it, they had mentioned that it was going to be used to achieve 60 FPS in 8K and 120 FPS in 4K. And I don't see 8K 60 FPS being a possibility yet. I could see it being a thing with the PlayStation 6. It'll need that to boost to that 60 frames per second consistently at 8K.
It'll be possible in games like Sea of Stars. I can see that being the case.
A game that doesn't, take 50 million teraflops to render.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can see it being used for like 4K 120 in some games. Like Call of Duty already has a 4K 120 mode, and it's literally just reducing the foliage distance. Like you can see the difference when you enable it. So I can see them utilizing that to like keep the foliage distance, but then lower the texture resolution or something like that, and have the AI upscale it back to native.
Yeah. So they'll run it at a lower resolution, but it's going to upscale to the 4K, and you probably won't notice the difference. Some people will. Digital Foundry and various other people, probably like myself, will notice it, but in everyday play, you're not going to see it, and it's going to be close enough to just as good. I mean, the checkerboard rendering that was on the PS4 was actually pretty darn good, and it was hard to tell.
They use it on the PS5 now, and it's still pretty damn good. Exactly. I think it's going to be a 4K 60 FPS is where it's going to be slotted for a good chunk of its initial development.
And that's one of the things the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox Series X were touted as. They're 4K 60 FPS machines with a possibility of 120 and maybe 8K. We haven't seen any 8K yet. We've seen very few for 120, and the majority of those 120 games don't run at 120. They run at like 90-ish. Which is still good, don't get me wrong. But now with PlayStation 5's Pros, PSSR, I believe is what it's called, we're going to see far more native 4K 60 games, which is good because we're starting to see games like Alan Wake and I keep wanting to say Helldivers, Hellblade 2 and various other games locked at 30. You don't have a choice. That is actually one of the things that came out this week. That's, again, more rapid-fire news, that Hellblade 2 is locked at 30 FPS on Xbox Series X. You can run it at higher FPS on PC, but not on your Xbox.
And I can see them. I'm going to call it right now. I called it in the Discord. I'll call it on the podcast side. I think when people complain about Hellblade 2 being locked at 30 FPS cinematic or whatever, they're going to turn around and say that the reason they chose to do this is because they're telling a cinematic story and they want it to feel like a movie. So they chose that frame rate. When in actuality, they just... I don't even know what they're doing anymore, honestly, with the Xbox side of stuff, because this has been a thing.
Did you play the first Hellblade?
Yeah, I played it on PC at like 100 frames per second.
Which, to be fair, the game is slow enough to where 30 FPS, or even a movie's 24 FPS would be fine.
Yeah.
It is not a fast-paced game in any way, shape, or form. And the second game is following that same trail.
I would say the fastest pace that ever comes to the game is during battle scenes.
And those are still slow.
Yeah, it's very much just hold parry, wait for attack.
Yeah,
and then
so
attack.
That's one of the things in the new game. They've actually stated in a recent video, you will never fight more than one enemy at a time, ever. What? And so the combat is still slow. However, they've varied the combat up a lot more often. There's far more animations. There's far more ways to attack people. So you're not gonna, like the first game. There was like a few attacks, a few defenses or dodges or whatever, but it was like rinse and repeat every single fight. So this one does look like they're adding variety to that at least. And it seems like they've done decent ways to allow it to be not just more varied, but it's going to feel unique. They actually said that they took one of the battle scenes in Hellblade 2 is heavily inspired by one of the Game of Thrones battle scenes. I guess it was like a 1.5-minute scene or something like that, where Jon Snow or something like that fights an army, and it's like a crazy cinematic scene. They're kind of trying to do that lot in Hellblade 2. So that way it kind of feels like this epic fight scene at all times, more or less. Yeah. And I loved the first one, so I really want to play the second one.
Honestly, I'll probably play the second one too.
I don't want to play it on my PC even. Like, I almost want to go buy a series for it, but I'm not going to do that.
It'll also probably be on Game Pass too, because it's a first party Microsoft title, isn't it?
Probably it will be. So I'll go ahead and just subscribe for $10, play it, and be done with it. They've also stated that it's going to be a short game too. It's going to be 5 to 8 hours long, which they've been working on this game for like 6 years at this point, and it's an 8-hour game. Although they try to justify that by saying our fan base likes shorter games, which I think is a shitty cop out. But I don't expect anything negative from the game. I'm going to
go ahead and say that it's an 8-hour game because it's so fucking slow with how much you interact and walk around. If they added a legitimate sprint mechanic and like an average run speed, like in Cyberpunk, how you just like jog around the city, the game would probably be done in like 5 hours, 6 hours if you're like pixel peeking and looking for treasure and shit like that.
Exactly. But I mean, I want to say I think the game's going to be a really good one. The lock to 30 FPS on consoles sucks, but that's just what those consoles are capable of. What can you do with it? It's going to happen with the next generation too. It's probably actually going to happen with the refresh. Everybody wants, because everybody wants 4K consistent 60 frames per second or whatever, and they'll market the console, whether it's the refresh or the next gen or whatever it is. They'll market it being able to do that, but then they'll turn around and they'll have developers. Because graphical clarity in games, there's a natural evolution to them. As engines become more sophisticated, graphics become more sophisticated, mechanics become more sophisticated. So it's a double-edged sword in the sense that the PS5, for instance, has the capability to play PS4 games at 4K at 60 frames per second because it's a PS4 version of the game. It's not using all of the extra graphical clarity of the current gen systems or the current gen engines. So not even just clarity, but all the systems and software that's forwarded the newer generation of stuff in.
Yeah. So we as gamers kind of have to, and it's not going to happen. It's more like wishful ranting at this point. We as gamers kind of have to come into these generational gaps with an understanding that developers aren't going to give us PS5 graphics on a PlayStation 7 just so it can run at 120 frames per second, or they're not going to give us PS4 graphics on a PlayStation 6 just so it can run at 120 frames per second. They want it to be entertaining. They want to appeal to like, ooh, this is a pretty game. Like, they want that to be a thing. So you turn around and go back and buy the next game, or you buy the next console generation, you buy the console refresh. You know what I mean?
I'm honestly not sure. Honestly, I'm kind of a separate mind. I think we're starting to get to a point where graphics have gotten so realistic, and I honestly think Hellblade, God, these Hell games, Hellblade 2, I honestly think it's probably going to be one of the best looking games to launch ever. Like, it's probably going to be better than just about anything else that PlayStation's put out this generation. While I think that PlayStation will beat it soon enough, but it's because of, like, perfect example, Xbox 360 back in that generation when Fight Night came out. That game was ridiculously good looking. It was an amazing looking game especially for its time, and it still holds up. But that's because you're rendering two people at one time. They have to worry about rendering. Hellblade 2 is going to be somewhat similar in that regard, and therefore it's going to be able to afford putting more of its assets into lesser things to render at any given time. And so obviously it's going to have a higher graphical fidelity because of that. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything negative. But my point in saying all of this is I think we're going to start seeing more games actually draw back on the hyper-realism, because that's actually one of the things. I don't remember if me and Russ talked about this on a previous episode or if we talked about this in just, in the Discord or whatever. But apparently it's mostly our generation, mine and Russ's. I don't remember how old you are, but it's mostly my generation that cares about graphical fidelity, because we watched the games go from regular Nintendo or Atari or whatever to hyper-realism it is now, and so we want to continue to see that evolution in games, but that's not really happening anymore. The upgrades are minimal, and so people are starting to draw back, especially the younger generations are starting to draw back in terms of fun. Look at Sea of Thieves and Fortnite and that racing one, the soccer racing one I can never remember the name of.
Rocket League?
Rocket League, yes. Lots of games like that, they're drawing back on the hyper-realism for fun. And, I mean, Helldivers is another one. It looks pretty, but it's also not super pretty. And so, like, that's not what matters anymore. People won't have fun. And so developers are starting to draw back on that so they can use more of these softwares just to make the game run better and play better and things of that sort. Speaking of Sea of Thieves, though, trying to get away from this topic a little bit, Sea of Thieves is coming out on PlayStation here shortly. I can't remember the release date on it.
I think it's literally in a month, within the month.
Yeah, I think it's this month as well. I'm pretty sure it's in April. But interestingly enough, the PlayStation 5 version is getting exclusive cosmetics, which is interesting. My best guess on this is they're going to be PlayStation exclusive cosmetics. Like, you might be able to buy a God of War ship or something like that.
Probably, yeah.
I actually didn't read the article itself, but that would be my best guess. So, of course, PlayStation's not going to allow PlayStation stuff to release on Xbox.
They're also getting a cross-platform toggle. So if you don't want to play with people on Xbox, you can just play with people on PlayStation.
Which I'm kind of curious. I don't know what their player base is like. I know that the majority of the players are in Game Pass, so those are metrics that Microsoft doesn't release. But if you look at Steam, there's not a lot of players.
Yeah, I can say
it's free with Game Pass. So why would you buy it and play it on Steam?
Yeah, I can say that when Sea of Thieves came out, honestly, even with all the expansions to date, there have been plenty of people posting on like Reddit, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, wishing that Sea of Thieves would come to PlayStation. Because Sea of Thieves launched back on the PS4 generation, didn't it? During the PS4 Pro and Xbox One refresh,
2018 is when it launched.
I specifically remember a bunch of people on the PS4 side being like, "Yo, what the fuck? Like, I want to play this game." I can see all of those same people, which is honestly probably in the hundreds of thousands.
I think it's going to be quite popular. Actually, for a while there, it was actually the most pre-ordered game on PlayStation. It it's clearly desired on the PlayStation side of things. That's why Microsoft is making their games on PlayStation, because they've polled their base, or they've at least read comments, and they see that the PlayStation crowd wants their game. So why wouldn't they release them there?
Do you know if they're getting the same up-to-date content as it stands right now, yes, or are they going back? Okay, that's the other question I was gonna. If they're going back a couple builds,
it's going to launch with it. Yep.
Okay.
It just makes sense that, like we've said, Microsoft doesn't care about hardware anymore. They want to sell their games. They want to be able to sell their cosmetics. That's what they want to be able to sell their subscriptions. That's what they want, and that's what's going to make them the most money, because they don't have to worry about R&D and developing consoles and everything else. They're going to stick in the hardware.
Sony's almost there.
Yeah. I don't see Sony doing it for a while, at least.
I can see them changing their development outlook to PC and PlayStation, like developing two versions of the game at the same time before they get into a point where they're like, we're just not going to worry so much about consoles this often.
I don't ever see them ditching hardware exclusives, at least not for a hot minute. I think the terms of exclusives are going to change, but less for Sony for a while. They're dominating the market. There's no reason for them to move out. Why not just reap the benefits of allowing Microsoft to release on their platforms? It's actually kind of funny that Microsoft is making money off of PlayStation with games like Minecraft and various other games that they're launching on PlayStation, but now PlayStation is making money off of them as well. So that's just how it works. Speaking of other rapid fire news, Final Fantasy VII Part 3, Square Enix is already hard at work on it, and interestingly enough,
Part 3
weeks ago, you didn't know they were making a Part 3?
No.
They said that there was going to be 3 parts to the Final Fantasy VII Remake series.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So they're already hard at work at number 3, and my best guess is this is probably going to come out in the next 2.5, 3 years, something like that.
For some reason, I thought Part 3 was Rebirth.
Nope, Rebirth was Part 2.
Okay.
With that said, Nobuo Uematsu, who is the composer for a lot of Final Fantasy video games, he's one of my favorite composers in general. I love the guy. His music has been, I love it. Anyways, he recently came out and said that he doesn't know if he has the strength to develop a full soundtrack for any video game anymore. Like, he's just too old.
Yeah.
However, yesterday he said he's going to compose the entirety of the Final Fantasy VII Part 3. He's like, I can't do it, but I will do it for this one. But it makes sense though. I mean, Final Fantasy VII is not just part of his legacy. Final Fantasy is Square Enix, and he's Square Enix, and so it makes sense for him to. That's probably going to be his last full thing. He might probably make tracks here and there, but it's not going to be a full soundtrack like he is for this one. So that's good for people like me that love his work. At the same time, I think I've said this already. Soken, I can't remember his first name, but he came into prominence with Final Fantasy 14, and he makes the music for Final Fantasy 14, and he's almost indistinguishable from Nobuo Uematsu. So like people like me, that's like super awesome, because now I have someone else who continues to make similar stuff.
I mean, indistinguishable in the sense of like the type of like the way they music. The composition. Yeah. I was trying to think of the word, but you got it.
Music. Yeah, it's almost exactly the same. You can see a little bit of difference in it, but it's really cool because the student effectively became the master in this case. It's really cool. It's really cool to see. And Soken is like, he's such a down to earth, humble guy that it's really cool. Actually, so with Final Fantasy 14, the Endwalker, which is the expansion that released before the new one that's about to launch, the Dawn Trail, when Endwalker was coming out, before it was out, he was actually in the hospital for one reason or another. If he had some sort of like major illness, he was composing in the hospital for Final Fantasy 14. So like, he loves his work, he loves the game, he's an awesome dude. So I'm really excited to see him take Uematsu's spot.
That's great.
Anyways, so moving on, Sony recently came out and stated that I don't know if this was actually stated by Sony, now that I think about it, but more or less, Helldivers 2, and I'm actually saying the right title this time. Helldivers 2 is a smaller title, right, for PlayStation. It ended up becoming a massive success, which is awesome, but it was a $40 title at launch if you decided to buy the base version, and it was clearly a budget title by comparison to, say, God of War or whatever else. It didn't take nearly as many people, it didn't cost nearly as much money, blah blah blah. Sony is more than likely going to release other similar smaller titles this year, because they did state that there would be no major AAA titles from known franchises this year. Helldivers is one of them. The biggest rumor is we might see another Astrobot this year, but the Astrobot will be a full game this time. It's not going to be like a tech demo like the last two were.
Yeah.
And so
Wish really excited for
that would
that.
be sweet. Yes, those
I
games
still have
are
to
awesome.
beat the current one. I think I got to the part with the T-Rex when he's like biting the blocks that you're trying to like run around on. But I keep dying because I'm not paying attention to the patterns. I'm just running around like an idiot.
If you have a PS5 and you haven't played the Astrobot game that came with the PlayStation and it's free, do it because it's an awesome title. It's more of a tech demo. It takes like, I want to say I platinumed it in probably 5 hours or something like that. It's not a hard or a long game, but it really demonstrates the awesomeness of the DualSense controller, which is the reason why Microsoft is making a DualSense effectively for the Xbox. It's a great controller.
Just to add to that, it's not a tech demo in the sense of like the PS4 when that came out, you would flick it and stuff would happen. It's like actually a full game.
Yeah,
that like
it's just a really small
emphasizes that emphasizes the idea of like the adaptive triggers and things like that. So it's a whole experience and not just like check this out type of deal.
Yeah, it's a few hour long game, but it is a tech demo for the controller, so much so that actually, if I'm not mistaken, there's actually a controller in the hub world for the game, and you can kind of play with it. It is cool, especially if you play through and like try to get everything like I did for the Platinum Trophy. You actually start to get like old technology, like the original PlayStation 1 and so on and so forth. You get to kind of like, play with it in the game. It's cool. Astrobot's an awesome series, and I'm really glad to see, I'm glad to see a rumor that it's going to get a full game. I've been wanting one since the first one. The first one was a PlayStation VR, effectively tech demo. They eventually made it non-VR required, but in any case, there is more stuff from Sony. Supposedly, there's going to be a state of play, although in this case, it's actually going to be a PlayStation showcase, which is, so state of plays are your like minor, like here's either this one game or here's like a quick fire of 10, 15 games from these people or from us or whatever. It's a much smaller showcase. The PlayStation showcases are their big ones, like what you might see at E3 or whatever has become of that. And so hopefully we'll see some big stuff from PlayStation, some of them smaller titles, as well as what we might see next year and stuff of that sort. It'd be really cool. And this actually comes from Jeff Grubb, and this guy is rarely wrong. He's been in the industry for a long time, and he generally knows what's going on, and he's the one
Grubb
that
is the
that
king.
we'll probably see something sooner rather than later, which I'm really excited to see, because there are, so we mentioned Stellar Blade earlier, and Stellar Blade is kind of like the last game we really know about exclusively, other than, say, Silent Hill 2 coming to PlayStation this year. And so we need to know what's coming out the latter half of the year for PlayStation exclusively anyways.
I really want to see an announcement for a DLC for Ragnarok that specifically emphasizes Atreus' story, because spoilers, if no one's played it, the end of the game, Atreus splits off with
Stop.
Oh, you haven't finished it?
No,
okay.
Stop. Atreus something. That's all I want to know. No more.
Okay.
The game. No, my time sucks, and I keep meaning to go back to it, but I'm currently busy with other things. And anyways, that was one of the rumors before the recent Valhalla DLC came out. They were talking about a spin-off of Atreus, and so now I'm hoping that it actually does happen. So I'll have to go back and please.
Well, just in the grand scheme of like Kratos, like he's an old man now. Like he's not as angry anymore. He's angry, but he's not that angry anymore. So like it would make sense that it would pass on to Atreus at some point.
Yeah. So more Sony news. There was actually some more. Jim Ryan, who's now stepped down from the CEO position for PlayStation, and he actually recently said that the PlayStation 5 is on track, quote unquote, on track to become Sony Interactive Entertainment's most successful console ever, which is kind of crazy when you consider he just announced that the PlayStation 2 sold 160 million consoles. It's the best-selling console ever.
Yeah.
Literally ever. And 160 million will be really hard to beat. But PlayStation 5 has been flying off shelves, so I'm going to stand by what I said a few episodes ago, where the PlayStation 5 Pro is going to launch at 500, maybe 550, but it's going to launch at a cheaper price. That way they can drop the price of what's currently available. That way more people will go buy it. They've got to keep people buying it. And how do you do that without dropping the price after 4 freaking years?
Yeah, I can see them doing that.
It just makes the most sense in my mind.
I wouldn't even be surprised if they did like 600 with the disc, 500 without the disc.
Yeah, I could see that, but that's why I still think they're not going to do that. It doesn't make any sense when now that they have the discless version where you can just buy an attachment for a disc console. They'll launch
the attachment's still $100. So even if you don't get the disc,
it's 80. But
they changed it. Okay.
Yeah, it's an $80 attachment. So if you buy the digital only, and then so the digital only currently is $450. The disc version is $500. So if you buy the discless, but then buy the disc console, it's actually more expensive than buying one with the disc tray on it. So that's why I think they're going to go that route. They're going to launch the Pro as a discless only, but you can buy the current disc attachment for it. It makes it way easier for them, less money, but also they'll make more money off of it if you want the disc like me, and I'm gonna do that if that happens. So it sucks to be me. It just makes the most sense in my mind. I don't see why they would do it that way.
I'm the opposite. I'll just spend the extra $20 and drop $100 on an SSD and just more space.
Exactly. So I get it. I get that route, and that kind of plays into our digital only. They're playing it. They're playing to what the industry cares for right now, which is digital. But they're going to give people the option, like me, to buy a disc tray, and it just makes sense. Last bit of PlayStation news, which is really good news, and I don't remember if we ever talked about this on the podcast. Me and Russ, and I believe you, Mike, but I believe this was a Discord conversation. I don't think it was on the podcast, but basically a little while back, one of the industry insiders, I don't believe it was Grubb, it was someone else, but basically he stated that the KOTOR remake, the Knights of the Old Republic remake, was dead. It was just gone. Sucks to be, Saber Interactive and whatever.
I don't think he specifically mentioned it was dead, but like it was up in the air.
No, his words were dead. They are no longer developing it. He said it's gone. And I vehemently was against that. I was like, no, it's not. It's not going to happen. It's still going to be made, and I'm not going to listen to an insider. I'm going to wait for the developers themselves to say something. And, well, turns out my inclination for the industry is pretty good. I honestly need to figure out how to become an analyst and get paid for it. But it has recently come out. This is as of the 2nd, so just a few days ago. Saber Interactive were sold by
Embracer.
Embracer, yeah, they were sold by Embracer, and I can't remember who picked them up. But in any case, they were picked up, and they recently came out and said, don't worry, the game's alive and well. It's developing super great, and you will see it eventually. And so that's good news. It's going to happen. I'm curious now, though, is it still going to be exclusive? That's the real question that I have.
Didn't Saber Interactive just buy themselves from Embracer? Isn't that what that was?
That's what it was. Yeah, they bought themselves. That's what they bought their freedom.
When I read that title, I just imagined just a bunch of people just in a closet with like a bucket, and they're like, all right, how much money we got? What do we got? Put in your coins.
Isn't that what Bungie did? They kind of bought their freedom,
basically. Yeah. They had to buy the rights to their own studio from Sony.
Yeah, from Microsoft, you mean?
Oh yeah, from Microsoft, yeah. And then Sony came in and was like, "Scoop,
we'll give you money," and they said, "Okay," which is pretty much exactly what Ninja Theory did with Hellblade. That's kind of the reason why I don't like them. But they also stated that they were going to stay indie because fuck the big publishers, they want their freedom. And then Microsoft said, "Here's money," and they said, "Ooh." Anyways, that's one problem.
I thought they were just getting investment money. But I guess not.
They in one breath said, we want to stay exclusive indie. They want to be what they called themselves. They called themselves a AAA indie, I believe is what they called themselves when Hellblade 1 came out. And their whole like mission statement was, screw the big developers or the big publishers. We're going to stay small. We want to be able to have our freedom. We want to do what we want. And then Microsoft said, how about some money? And they said, yes, please. Which is honestly, I think that's why Hellblade 2 is taking so damn long to develop, is because Microsoft is behind them. Yeah. Although Microsoft being behind them probably allowed them to expand on what they were going to do with Hellblade 2. So it's kind of like a wash, really. Yeah. Getting away from PlayStation, Microsoft, or in this case, I can't remember the developer that makes Gears of War anymore. People Can Fly or something like that. They basically stated that they are working on Gears 6, but they can't show it, although it might be shown this year. However, quote, people aren't ready.
I mean, I've played every Gears of War game since the first one, and it's pretty much been a copy and paste. Gonna be honest.
Yeah, they have been. The Gears of War, I think it was 4. I think Gears of War 4 is where they try to change it to be more story focused.
Yeah,
and kind of be closer to like a Tomb Raider or Uncharted style of storytelling, which was good. They actually got away from the really bare bones baby storytelling that they had in the first couple of games. I laughed through some of the more quote intense scenes of the first couple of games, and I was pissed. Yeah,
they reminded me of like the way the games played. Reminded me of what do they call it? Millennials came up with a term for movies that do. I think it's called boomer fantasy movies, where it's all action and no consequence type thing. It's just like full on, like, this is the plot, but also here's this.
Epic and Cliff Bleszinski, when they made these games originally, the first couple of games, they weren't ever known for their stories, and so the storyline was just a means to allow the story, or the means to progress the gameplay. So the storyline was called 100% third row or third party to the games, and they tried to redo that with Gears of War 4, and I played 4 and even a little bit of 5, and they were definitely better. So I have to give them credit. So hopefully they continue that line of things with Gears of War 6. I would imagine what they mean is people aren't ready, is they're talking about the graphics. That's probably what they're going for. Hopefully.
Unreal Engine 5 photogrammetry, like.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta say, I did play Gears of War 5. I skipped 4 just because of my bad tastes with 2 and 3. Although I definitely preferred 3 over 2 for some reason. 5 was a good refresher after skipping one generation of Gears of War. I gotta be honest, I haven't beaten it, but there's definitely some good foundation there, which I'm sure if I played 4, I wouldn't call 5 the good foundation, but
Yeah. The 4 focused on his son, the Marcus Phoenix's son.
Yeah.
And anyways, decent game. They kept with what made Gears of War great, but they added a decent story behind it, and so I have to give them credit for it. Last little bit of news, but not least, this is going to be it's going to hit people in the nostalgia feelings. The dead MMO City of Heroes has actually been given, interestingly, unprecedented official license to a fan server. So, when MMOs die, there's inevitably someone that's going to find the source files and they're going to open up their own fan servers. Mm-hmm. Well, for whatever reason, somehow, the team that's been running the fan server for City of Heroes has been given official license for an official server. So I don't know what this means as far as content. Maybe they're gonna allow these these fans to create new content or whatever, or maybe just keep it alive. It'll be interesting to see, but they are stating that the what's the word I'm looking for? The future is bright, or they actually use the word vibrant. So
like a combination medal for running a fan server for so damn long. Thank you for being the like 10 people that still play the game.
I mean, it really does play into that these type of games, when they go away, they're gone for good unless someone decides to continue keeping it going on their own piece of hardware, and it is one hell of a testament. But it does make you sort of worry about, in the future, we're going to lose access to games that were made. Even if the game sucks, there's always going to be someone who enjoys it, like Babylon's Fall for PlayStation 5. That game crashed and burned, not quite as hard as the day before, but it took like 6 months for it to be gone, and now you can't play it anymore. Actually, it was so bad that Square Enix paid retailers to destroy copies of it so people wouldn't buy it. I actually, when I heard that news, I quickly went to GameStop and bought a copy so I could have it on my shelf, just to have it there. I know I can't play it, but it's over there now.
In those 10 years, it could be like Ruby Rose or whatever, and you can sell it for $2,000.
Which is actually one I wasn't planning on mentioning, but long story short, there's a PlayStation 2 very Silent Hill / Resident Evil-esque style horror game that takes place, in Europe? Is that correct?
In the UK.
It's just a horror game, and it was actually banned in the UK because UK is stupid and wouldn't actually do their research on what the game is. But anyways, there's rumors that they might remaster or bring it back somehow. But I was stupid and sold my copy because I had no idea what I had a few years back. I think I sold it for like $200, and I was like, I needed money, so that's why I did it. And now I'm like, I really wish I hadn't, because now I got to spend $400 to get a copy.
That guy you sold it to was so fucking happy.
Yes, he was. He knew what he was getting.
He's been sitting on eBay for 3 years, and he's just been watching the prices slowly creep past $1,000. And he got Tim over here. He's like, "I'll sell it to you for some belly button lint and paperclip."
Yeah, I was dumb. I actually sold quite a few decent games. I actually had an unopened copy of which is 64 game. I remember I wanted this game. It was I'll have to look at right now. The game is escaping me, but I freaking loved the game as a kid on Sega, on N64. Good lord. It was a very Mario 64 style game, but it was so far in the Japanese realm of things that at the time, I'm surprised it got brought to America. Like I can't believe at that time it made it to America.
Yeah, that really wasn't a thing that happened back then, because everybody was too. Yeah.
There were no weebs in America. There were no manga fans, and like no one did that stuff. You were like ostracized if you liked this kind of stuff. Anyways, I remember wanting a copy of it, and I told my spouse at the time that I wanted one, and they found one, and they bought it unopened. I remember opening it and going, "Yeah, oh yes." No, because I wasn't going to open that thing. I wasn't going to open this copy of that game. So I stood on my shelf. I remember selling it for quite a few $100, probably like $400, because it was unopened. Now I wish I still had it, because I'm stupid for selling it. I'm actually looking at Rule of Rose right now, and there's a copy selling for $2,000 right now. Like, that's unopened, all that good stuff. But
I think that's if it's the same one you're looking at that I was looking at. It's starting $2,000 with no bids plus like $30 shipping.
yeah. But I don't see a copy of this game anywhere less than $200. Like, that's how expensive this game is now. You can buy it for $600 or $245. It just depends on the quality of the game.
And if it has a case, if it includes the manual, collector's edition shit,
all that stuff.
Another good example of a game that got deleted and is now being run by their community. You remember Knockout City, that dodgeball game?
Yes, that was recent.
That was wasn't it? Yeah, it lasted like just under a year, and then they announced that they were closing down the servers. I think it was in 2023 is when they closed down the servers, and
it launched in 2021.
Okay, then yeah. So it lasts a little more than 2 years. Little more than 2 years. But it was a small team, if I remember correctly. It was EA published, but it was a small team that was like developing it and maintaining it.
It was made by Villain Studios.
Yep. And I had at the time, I think I actually got the supporter pack, so I don't know if it was free on launch. I think it went free to play later in its life. If I'm remembering correctly.
If I'm not mistaken, it launched on PlayStation Plus as a free title, but it wasn't free to play originally, but eventually went free to play. Yeah.
When it I think around the time that it got ported to Switch later on is when it went free to play. Because I remember on Switch it was free to play when I downloaded it to our Switch. Where was I going with this? So I thought the game was just gone. Nope. Apparently there's like I don't know if it's like one dude or a couple guys. They are operating community servers by themselves. They've been operating them since the announcement, essentially in 2022, when they announced that they were closing the game down in 2023. These guys got together and they basically, excuse me, now your hiccups are coming to me. Jesus. They managed to grab all the source code and all of the assets. I don't think they're making new content yet, but I know that they are recycling the old seasons. So it's free to download. As long as you own the game on Steam, you can go and download the launcher. I don't think there's a way to get it right now without previously owning it. So if you don't currently own it on Steam, you can't just go to the Steam store because it's delisted. You actually have to like hunt it down using the Steam ID for the game.
Actually, no. There's a website, knockoutscity.com/private-server-edition #section-download. Anyways, if you go to that, which we'll go out here, let me share this. But if you go to that website, you can actually download it for free. It literally lets you choose your version. You can choose the full game and server, which gives you the Windows version of the game, and it even gives you a private hosted server with a high and lower resolution texture options, or you can just download the server and host one. The game's not included in that, but in any case, yeah, you can play this game if you want to. It's a 17 gig download for the low res and a 22.4 gig version or download for the high res. And
we're gonna have to grab the high res.
Just download it.
I accidentally came across it because somebody, obviously they're being review bombed on Steam because like the game is just gone now. Somebody had posted that you can download like a community launcher, so like it'll interface with your Steam version of the game, and then you can just play on community servers. But the one you found, I'll have to look at that too, because I would prefer to not have to run it through Steam because I don't want to link my Steam account to some sketchy launcher.
yeah. Well, with that said, speaking of dead games, we should probably kill the podcast tonight. Russ is probably not going to be too happy because we ran long. So, sorry, buddy. We love you.
That's what you get for missing out.
Right. So we're gonna go ahead and call it a night. Thanks for watching. We do this, guys. We do this for you guys. For all of our Patreon guys, we'll be back in just a minute. And before I leave, Snow Sarah 95, you said hi as we're dipping out. So go ahead and rewind and listen to the episode, or if you want, find the links to our Discord and you can join in on the conversation. Anyways,
and our Spotify and YouTube and all that.